Hello everyone, I'm Danielle. So today's pick a card reading is focused around partnerships, and I wanted to focus on if you've had a miscommunication or conflict with your partner, and if you're just trying to understand their side better, if you're really trying to figure out why it even happened, because it's just so common. And I think it's like the number one problem in relationships is based off of a miscommunication. So what a better thing to do a card reading on than a common problem that we all have and face. The breakdown of this card reading, what we're going to be looking at is the energy of each person. I'm going to put it as person 1 and person 2 because I'm not sure if you're going to resonate with person 1 or person 2. So I'm just going to leave it open that it could be either one that you're resonating with. So we'll look at person 1's energy right now. So with the miscommunication happening, with the conflict or the argument, it doesn't have to be an argument. I'm really just gonna leave it as a miscommunication because sometimes we just feel a bit weird. We didn't really understand why something was said, and it's not exactly an argument. It's just a little bit of a less great feeling. So we're gonna see what your energy is right now and what person 2's energy is right now after this has happened. And then from there, we're going to be looking at what was the conflict or the miscommunication. And then we're going to break it down to your perspective, how you feel about them, and what you're wanting from them. And then person 2's feeling about you, how they're feeling about the miscommunication or the conflict, and what they're needing. End it with, what does this relationship look like when it's in harmony, when you're both getting your needs met? Because I think it's so important to know, just because this is a miscommunication right now or a conflict or a lower spot doesn't mean that there isn't beauty in this relationship and it just can't be harmonious. So I just really want to reconnect it and see where you both can end up when you're feeling fulfilled, heard, seen, and all your needs are being met. All right, so I'm pretty excited to do this one. I feel like it's something that all of us struggle with, and it's really nice to get the third perspective on, the higher perspective where you can see both sides and really understand why the miscommunication happened in the beginning. And super exciting for the clearing and healing today. I actually got my boyfriend to decide, so my partner, to decide to do distant Reiki with me. So we're going to do a double distant Reiki healing for the collective. I'm also very excited about it because we haven't done that before together, but I'm really excited that he's excited to offer just some healing for you all as well as me. So yay! If you're interested in that, I think it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. So that will be offered at the end of this whole reading for the collective. We are picking from just the crystals. I haven't pulled any cards yet. So pile 1 is going to be this Trollite. Pile 2 is going to be choosing from this piece of Fluorite. And pile 3 has this choice of Angel Aura Quartz. Alright, so if you've never done a pick a card reading before, I'll give you an explanation right now. You start by grounding yourself, and you do that by either taking 4 deep breaths or putting your feet firmly on the floor and visualizing roots growing down from the balls of your feet all the way down to Mother Earth. If you are going to take the breaths, I recommend breathing in air from above your head down through your nose to your center, and then gently releasing it out your mouth. And do it a few times until you find yourself getting a good breath in and not just forcing air down and out. And you'll usually be more out of breath. So you ground yourself whichever way works best for you, and then you ask yourself the question, which crystal has a message for me? Which pile has a message for me? Or you can ask yourself, which pile has a message for me around my miscommunication with my spouse? Which crystal is symbolizing a message for me around a conflict I had with my partner? Something along those lines. And then you just look at each crystal and you see if one catches your eye or is drawing your attention a little bit more. There's no real wrong or right way to do this. You don't have to be able to logically determine why you would choose one of these. Just whichever one happens to be standing out to you. So it doesn't even have to be a crystal that you would normally choose at a crystal shop or anything like that. And if you are having a hard time being drawn to one of the crystals, you can go to the description box and look at the timestamps. If there is a number that's just standing out to you or calling to you, you can choose a pile that way as well. All right, I'm going to give you time now to ground yourselves if you haven't already, and I will see you all in your card readings. Pile 1, so you chose this piece of Trollite. We are going to pull all the cards now for you, so I'm just going to do that quickly and then we're going to discuss what we got. All right, so we are going to look at person 1, how they're feeling right now. We have the poet and we have athlete. Light attributes dedicated to transcending physical limits, including handicaps, development of personal willpower and strength of spirit. Shadow attributes, misuse of athletic ability for selfish ends, false sense of invulnerability and entitlement. And then over here we've got person 2. They're feeling hedonist. Light attributes inspires creative energy to embrace the good things in life, celebrates the beauty in yourself. Shadow attributes pursues pleasures to the detriment of health, indulges at the expense of others. And we have the Starborn. And then the conflict or the miscommunication that occurred, we have the Magician. Archangel Raziel, you are ready, you have the resources or the ability to manifest them. Life is magical. Life experience, Archangel Shamuel, a significant life event, a powerful revelation that leads to change, time to spread your wings. And King of Water, trustworthy, compassion, respected, cultured. Open your heart and mind to those around you. Trustworthy and heartfelt advice. Charity work. I think I'm seeing why there was a bit of a miscommunication or a conflict in this partnership. So person 1 here, I see that, how would I put this? I see person 1 as having some things that they know that they want, and specifically I think this is family related. So it could be person 1 is wanting marriage, is wanting, I keep getting kids, like a children, maybe it's just even like a dog, but I do feel like person 1 is seeking out new life experiences, more growth in their partnership and in themselves, and wanting to start essentially like the next phase in their life, and wanting to be a parent, wanting to be, I do think, like take their relationship to the next level. And I really see that they're coming from a place of like love, like their heart is on their sleeve. They really want this, and they want it so much that it almost is like everything right now. Like it's their priorities, it's their main goals, it's what they value, and it's what they want to experience. And I do get that this is like a very deeply connected to their emotions, this dream, what they're wanting. So I do think a miscommunication within this partnership would be that if person number 2 was caught off guard or wasn't emotionally vulnerable in the conversation, that it would have really have hurt person number 1, that it would have felt like a rejection or a dismissal of what they're wanting. And just even I would feel like person number 1 would feel like person number 2 didn't respect what they want, their dreams, essentially what they were wanting. And I also get that person number 1 really does want to see the bigger picture. I feel like they want to ask more questions and really want to know why person number 2 does or doesn't feel a certain way about going to the next level, having children, being married, doing more things together, growing together. And I really get that they just really want to understand if it's something they're not doing right, if it's something about them that they need to change. They really want to know emotionally where person number 2 is at and where their priorities and their values are at. And I get that for person number 1, it just seems like a very reasonable, sincere thing to want to know, and that they just feel like they've waited long enough, that they've given enough time, that they're really just ready to move on. I feel like for some, they feel like there is like this time constraint on when they want to have children, or when they want to be married by, or when they want to have had these dreams accomplished. So I do feel a bit of a time pressure. Not that it would have to be within the next year so much, but I feel like within the next 5, within the next 3. And if person number 2 isn't envisioning any of this, wanting any of this, person number 1 needs to know, because person number 1, this is like life dream kind of conversation, wanting to go to the next level, having that family. I feel like having children is really important. And just kind of cutting out the drama around it all, and just truly knowing where this relationship stands, if they're on the same page. But like I said, this is coming from a loving place, though. Like, I get that person number 1 doesn't just want children with anyone, doesn't just want a marriage with anyone, doesn't just want to go emotionally deeper with anyone. It's because they feel like person number 2, they love them, they want this relationship to go further, but they need to know that they're on the same page, that this is something that is in the future for this partnership. Yeah, but right now I just feel like person number 1 is not feeling heard, seen, or understood, or even, I would say, maybe even respected in this topic by person number 2. Person number 2 over here, I feel like there's a lot of different things going on the inside versus the outside for you. Person number 2, I see that people looking at you think you have it all figured out. You have like the cool person vibe, like the cool guy or the cool girl. Like you've got it all under control. You're well liked. I feel like you have like a pretty large social circle, and you almost feel these pressures to maintain that type of character, if that makes sense, to not show that you're struggling, to not show that everything isn't okay. I do get that it's almost like you don't feel quite safe or comfortable sharing the emotions going on inside. So when person number one is just asking and again, it actually is just making it harder and harder for you. You might start to put on a more self-protective shell, maybe is the word I'm looking for, of where you're, I feel like if you like going out with friends, then you might be going out more right now. You might be drinking more. You might be going and doing different activities a little bit more. And it's coming from this protective place of trying to avoid the intensity of person number one, because they're just asking things that you're not quite sure you feel safe sharing, or even going within and being honest with yourself about how you feel about that. I honestly feel like slowly you feel like you're breaking down inside, in the sense like you're not holding it together as well as you would like, or as well as you normally do. And then it feels a little bit like a ticking time bomb, like this pressure being put on you. It feels immense. And like I said, person number one isn't really intending it. They're just very sure of what they want, and they want to know. They want everything to be on the same page. They don't feel the same challenges around being emotionally vulnerable that person number two does. And it's very interesting. It's very different energies. And I can see how person number two isn't really getting the style of communication that they're needing. Like pressure almost makes them shut down more. Yeah, it seems very tricky. And I'm not sure, I'm not really positive if person number two does want a family or children. I almost feel like within themselves, they need to go within and reflect on that. I feel like there's a lot of fears that they need to work through before they can give this honest answer. I think there's a lot of fears around, would they be a father that they would be proud of being? Would they have the time to give this child and person number one as their partner the quality of life that they would want to give a partner or their children? Do they feel ready for this type of responsibility? I just feel like they really weren't expecting to have to think about all this for a long time. And that's almost what they need to go within and figure out before they can even answer person one, because I think that's where this miscommunication is coming. Person number two is getting defensive because this is something that has a lot of fear being triggered within them coming up. And what I kind of get is that I don't think person number two will be able to answer person number one until they have that time and that desire to go within themselves and really ask those questions and really be truthful with what do they want? What do they want for their future? What is their dreams? What are their values? And is person number one the person that changes that for them? Is person number one just a kind person that they can admire, but they don't feel ready to be that person, to step into that role? I feel like for person number two, they have really high standards for themselves. So it's almost, that's where like this pressure on themselves is coming from. That's where this fear is coming up, because they have such high expectations for themselves and what like a good father would be, what a good mother would be, what a good partner would be, that they're feeling, I feel like internally quite intimidated by all that they're not even fully able to register if it's person number one or if it's just something they thought they are good enough at, something that they believe they are able to do for anyone. So I'm really trying to make sure that I'm pointing out that I don't feel like person number two is really in a place where they can see person number one. They're almost being like triggered and stuck in this fear around, can they do this? Can they even be these people? And I really feel like it's an internal battle. And they're not handling it very well. They're not handling the pressure very well. Yeah, I feel like it's like starting to seep out, like these imperfections, or maybe they are being a little like, I don't know for sure, but they might be doing some things that seem more hurtful to person one than normal. And it's really nothing to do with that. It's just they don't know how to handle this pressure, this fear within themselves. Hoping this makes sense. But yeah, I can see person number one is just really over here, really wanting answers. And they're both people deserve to have their own experience. They're like this, I feel like person number two has to go through their own thing. The more pressure they get, I think the more they're gonna crack, and it won't maybe be such a beautiful ending there. But person number one does deserve to have their time respected and know if this relationship is going down the path they're wanting to. Is it going to involve children? Because I do believe person number one would love children, and person number two doesn't have any interest in having children. Then just right there, it's something that person number one won't compromise on, that they shouldn't compromise on if that is what they want. So there's just a lot of going within and figuring out what they want for themselves for person number two, but person number one has already done that. So I don't think they quite realize that person number two is going through that struggle. It's not person number one, it's just person number two having to really go deep and figure out what do they want for themselves. Okay, so if this seems like the situation you're in, if you can resonate with one of the people and your partner seems like the other one, then this is probably the right pile for you. I am just going to pull a few more cards now. We are going to be looking at what each person is wanting from the other, and we're going to look at how each person feels about the other, because I feel like it's important to really reiterate that, especially in this connection, because I don't get that person number two has any bad emotions towards person number one. They're really having this inner conflict with them, with their own self. And I don't know if person number one fully recognizes that or is thinking that it could just be because they aren't good enough. Person number two doesn't think person number one is good enough. And that, I don't think that's the case. I think that's just how the outside world would see person number two acting towards person number one, but it really feels very within themselves, like a turmoil within themselves, creating just so much chaos within themselves. I should say that. I feel like a lot of chaos is happening right now just because of this miscommunication. So if the relationship is just having a hard time flowing good, I wouldn't be surprised, just because this was a really big conversation or a really big miscommunication. I feel like the conversation didn't really fully happen either. One tried to bring it up, one tried to like get clarification, and then it just got shut down. Someone walked away, got stonewalled. I would expect all those things to have happened in this miscommunication or this conflict that occurred. I am just gonna scoop these out of the way so that I have room for the other cards. I will, yeah, maybe I'll go like that so you can still see that, but we'll just have a little more room for more information to come forward. We'll put the conflict card in the middle. Okay, so we are going to ask, how does person one feel about person number two? How does person one feel about person number two disregarding this conflict? How do they, or this miscommunication, how does person number one feel about person number two? And you know what, I kind of want more than one card for that. There we go. How does person number two feel about person one outside of this conflict or this miscommunication? How does person number two feel about person number one outside of this miscommunication? Let's go with that. And, okay, and now we're just going to ask, what does person number one want from person number two? What does person number one want from person number two? Maybe I'll do a couple more, because it's always nice to have a few more options when we're having a harder time. Okay, what does person number 2 want for person number 1? What does person number 2 want from person number 1? Cool, cool. I'm really excited to see what comes out for this. I feel like I can see how I would want clarification in this situation. Okay, so for person number 1, we have over here Chiron, and lightning. Maybe I'll put this there. And then person number 2, what we have for you is conjunction. It's a really pretty card. And separation. So what I'm getting person 1 wants from person number 2, I really see this, and I don't know if you could see this in the card, but over here is a cracked egg in person number 2, and here is the cracked egg again. I thought that was really cool. And I really just get that person number 1 is wanting person number 2 to just be vulnerable and real. I feel like person number 2 thinks they might have to be perfect, might have this ideal role to be, and person number 1 is kind of like, I don't care. I don't care about perfect. I want real. I want to know what you're feeling. I want to know who you are. I want to know your story. I want to know who you want to be, what you're passionate and inspired about. I want to know your lows and your highs, and I just want to know you and where you're at. And they really want to be able to support you in it. That's the main reason. They don't want to know just to know. They want to know because they want to be closer with person number 2. They want to have that vulnerability, and they want to help person number 2 through the hard times. I get that a lot. Like they want to be truly a partner in helping person number 2 be the best person they can be, become the best human they can become. And I really get that that's from a very sincere, loving place. With this other card here, bit of a mixed message. I really get that person number 1 is really in a place where if person number 2 doesn't want to be with them, even though it will deeply hurt person number 1, they are okay with the pain as long as they know that person number 2 like is just honest with them. And what I mean is, I feel like person number 1's like, I know I want a great love. I know I want a beautiful family. I know I want to experience the highest form of love I can experience, and I would like that to be with person number 2. But if person number 2 doesn't feel the same way, then I want them to cut off this connection. And although the pain will be great, I want that great love, that someone else feels that is just as great as mine. And it's really interesting energy because it's very mature in a lot of ways to be able to say that and say, like, this is what I want so much that I'm willing to endure the heartache, the heart pain, the devastation. But I think it's really important that person number 2 knows that. Like, person number 1 knows what they want, and if person number 2 isn't able to give that to person number 1, they just don't want to waste their time, essentially. And I don't think they think they're wasting their time with you, but if you don't feel the same way, then they feel like they might be. Like, you might be taking them away from that deep, passionate love, that partnership that they're really excited about. And I also get another message here around, once again, them really saying, like, they don't want person number 2 to get caught up in their own story and about how maybe person number 2's family wasn't very kind, how maybe they had past relationships that didn't end well or they couldn't fully trust. And person number 1 keeps really reiterating to person number 2 that they are something different. Just get out of their old story and just be with them now. They are a different person. They are very compassionate, very loving. They're willing to do the work with you. You don't need to person number 2 doesn't need to hide anything, doesn't need to be ashamed of not being perfect. Person number 1 is willing to go through the hard stuff, to work on the stuff that isn't fun, to go through like lower times, because ultimately, like, that's what they want. It's just that amazing, stronger partnership. And they know that it takes 2 people to have a strong partnership like that. So I really get that person number 1 is really down to do the harder work with person number 2, wants to see that rough emotional side, that the not pretty stuff, because they really, I just keep getting, want to support and grow with you. They want to be that ultimate person for you if you also want that from them. All right, and as for person number 2, very interesting cards to come out together, as I don't know if you can tell, but they are essentially opposites, which further explains just person number 2's absolute battle within. So how do I express this? So separation, how I see this is almost feeling like needing time apart, needing space, and I don't get it from a end all be all. Like how I was saying, how person number 2 almost is shutting down with the more pressure put on them. What they want from person number 1 is essentially a break or space from each other. But what I get when I see this card right after is so that you can become stronger afterwards. I don't know exactly on the amount of time this would be, or if this would be a day, a week, a month, a year. I'm not sure. I'm not actually getting really a time, but I do see from the person number 2 is they're wanting a separation. So I essentially see that they can go within and figure out what is going on there. What do they want? Essentially think they want to be a better person, and they don't believe that with what's going on right now, with who they are right now, that they can fulfill person number 1. So I hope I'm explaining it well. Like I really see like what they want also from person number 1, which is why it's so funny, it's so clashing with this one, is they want to be that perfect love match, that union that is so strong, that is so true, that is just the ultimate loving union. But I think they're saying that they believe, person number 2 believes, that they need time apart to get there. Yeah. Not an easy thing to hear. And I don't think it's an easy thing for them to feel, which could even be partially why they are having such a hard time with communicating with person 1. So I actually even feel like for some of you, you might be on a little like weird break with each other. And I'm going to say weird because I think it might not be that clear to person number 1. But I do see that person number 2's intention is essentially to be able to step up, be real, I wish I could like put this into words better. Just to have like that infinite love, that really true, all-encompassing, all-accepting love. And I do get that these 2 people are definitely opposites, because this is what number 2 likes about number 1, is that their opposition is what makes them even stronger. Where one is not as strong, the other one is very strong. And I get that person number 2 really likes that about this union. It's very interesting because nothing about this partnership, from the perspective of person number 2, gives me the impression that they don't want to reconnect with person number 1. Like when I see this card, I almost get conflicted with saying they want time apart, because I feel the sadness of person number 1 when they hear that. But I really get that it feels like they need a break to become the best thing for person number 2. It's very interesting match. Very interesting match, because I do feel like when I see this card, it feels good. It actually feels very loving. Very, very loving. And the same thing with person 1 over here, where I was saying I just see a lot of support and a lot of love. So it makes sense why person number 1 would really like clarity, because especially if you're taking a break or in a gap right now, I can see why you're wondering where you should be right now, if you should be waiting for this person. You almost just want to be released. But the problem is this person number 2 doesn't fully want to let you go. They want a break so they can become better, and then they want to basically love you as hard as they can. So I'll just leave you with that information so you can all decide what's best for yourselves. For the cards, for how person 1 feels about person number 2, this is so funny. Love it when cards just keep reiterating what I've been feeling and thinking. So their feelings towards person number 2 is this could be the one. You've already met the romantic partner you seek. Yeah, so I really do see that person number 1, so much love for person number 2. There's not a lot of doubts here other than the confusion of what's happening. I get that person 1 is probably very confused around person number 2, and I just feel like the lack of communication that's been given to person number 1 from person number 2. But I also can see that person number 2 is just doesn't even know how to form the words to explain to person number 1 any of the things that person number 1 is wanting answers from. So person number 2, if you're watching this, person number 1 thinks you could be the one. If you didn't hear that already from everything else they were saying about you and wanting to be in partnership with you and start a family with you. And then we have honeymoon, enjoy the bliss, holidays time together. So yeah, definitely love spending time with you, person number 2. They really can see future with you. I think I can see, like, they just can see that there's so much adventure and romantic experiences they want to share with you. I really get that they just really want that partner that they can experience a lot of just a lot of growth with, like can go anywhere but have their partner with them, travel anywhere and do new adventures but within their partnership, because they just want that experience, and they really want that strength in partnership. Yeah, I do really like it. I do see that there's just a block in them understanding in communication in this relationship. So yeah, the doubt and the confusion is coming from them not really understanding where person number 2 is at. And then person number 2, their feelings towards person number 1, we have passion. That's great. I also get another communication block. Lots of communication block on person number 2's side. I'm so sorry. Those are tricky. New love, a new person has stirred romantic feelings. Yeah, how I really see this. Yeah, definitely a bit of communication block, but from what I can see from person number 2 for person number 1, still a lot of passion there, still a lot of love. I know when I see new love, I actually really like this because I almost feel like it means person number 2 is shifting with something within them, and they're starting to see person number 1 in a new light. And I think it's a better light. Not that it was ever a bad one, but just really seeing that sincerity. I don't know if person number 2 knew just how compassionate and how much person number 1 really wanted to support, and how much empathy that person number 1 had for person number 2, how much they wanted to. Oh, I'm sorry, my battery had died and I didn't realize that it had cut off. Where it cut off was with person number 2, and where they were starting to see this newfound affection, this new perspective of person 1. And how I saw it was that person number 2 was really forming a new type of love for person number 1. And I got that it could even be because of the distance. They started to really even see it now. They started to see person 1 more clearly now that they weren't feeling so pressured. It really was like a beautiful new love, seeing you as a genuine, deep, compassionate, empathic human being, and really admiring that and loving that about person number 1. And I just really see like it's shaping into this deeper, all-encompassing love from person number 2's side, and a change in their admiration of person number 1. It's almost like person number 2 needed to take a step back to really see how great and the full beauty of person number one. And that's where I see the new love coming in, is that newfound appreciation, that newfound perspective and understanding of person number one, and just how I just keep thinking how beautiful of a person they are. And that I still see that there is a lot of passion in the connection, a lot of attraction for person number one from person number two, and that if there was any doubts around that, don't worry about it. I feel like there's still lots of attraction there. That's definitely not an issue for person number two, feeling that way. And then the other thing I really wanted to comment here was about this crystal that you had chosen for this pile, the communication block that keeps coming up. I feel like I should have seen it coming with having a Trollite stone as the crystal selection. But that also being said, another thing that I saw come up in one of the cards here was for person number one, really starting to see things differently and wanting a change or wanting deeper understanding around things. And Trollite is about seeing things differently, and it could be something, a situation that had happened a bunch of times, numerous times, but now something has changed and you can't unsee what you've discovered or what your perspective now can pick up on. So I feel like that could be an important message for those of you who were resonating with person number one, or even person number two. But I just thought maybe you would appreciate that coming through just in the crystal alone that you chose. So it's really saying that something that's normally a small detail now feels like a big thing, a thing that you can't unsee. Trollite also helps with clarity of mind and really knowing what you're wanting, what you're feeling is right for you, which is also very applicable for both people in this pile. So that might be why you were attracted to this pile to begin with. Okay, we're gonna cut back into where I had restarted this initially when the battery first died. So far I just pulled one card for what is this relationship like when it's in harmony, and what is person one's energy when this relationship's in harmony. And I just have to pull one more for what person's two energy is like when this relationship is in harmony. Okay. Let's see what we got for you all. So person one, we have rescuer, provides strength and support to others in crisis, acts out of love with no expectation of reward. And I don't know if you can see that, it's a heart-shaped lifeboat. And we have hermit, seeks solitude to focus intently on inner life, serves personal creativity. And we have trust. This situation is calling for you to have trust. Okay, so what this situation looks like when it's in harmony. I actually want to talk about person number two. What I see is that I think right now, or previously what has happened, is that I really get that they might drink more or go out more or do more distracting things that are outside of themselves when feeling emotionally unstable or insecure in their relationship. And I think once this relationship is in harmony, how I can see it is that instead of going outside of themselves to find something to make them feel better or validate them or calm them down, or basically create a form of security, they will be able to do that within themselves. They will just go and say, meditate or go for a walk. If they like running, they might go for a run and just really hold space for themselves and say, okay, what's going on? I'm not acting like myself. What's up? What do I need? And they're really going to be able to do this for themselves instead of essentially, I just keep getting, they'll be able to go within themselves and figure it out versus going outside of themselves and distracting themselves. And I see that overall, they'll just have a bigger joy in whatever it is they're doing. They'll have more confidence and more joy in just their overall life. Seems seems good. And for this one, I feel like when they're in harmony, I feel like person number one is going to feel more comfortable with being a supportive person for person number two. They're going to, I feel like they're going to be more understanding from the perspective of person number two. They will hear what you have to say, and instead of perhaps hearing it as I don't know if excuse is the right way or a story, they hear it from a place of support and compassion and empathy, which is also who person one is when they're not feeling defensive or like they have to protect themselves or their heart. So I really feel like this is more the true form of person number one, just from everything I can see, is being a compassionate, supportive individual. And then the trust, I really like this. That's great. What is the best thing for all relationships is trust. Definitely trust within it. So that seems like a really good thing to be ending on for this. All right, I hope this brought some clarity for whether you were person one or person number two. I can see why this would be a very confusing time for you both. I just wish you both the best of luck. If you're wanting a Reiki session, get some of the lower energies out, some of that confusion energy out, there will be one at the end of this card reading for you all. It is for the whole collective of this card reading. So I will be doing that with my partner. So it will be really powerful. It makes sense. It's a partnership reading. I should probably be doing a collective Reiki session with my partner. Okay, so I will either see you there or I will just see you around. Okay, best of luck with this. You've got it. You've got it. Great energy. Hello, pile 2. You are the one who selected Fluorite. All right, I'm just going to take a moment now to pull some of the cards, and then we'll discuss what has come up and come through. Pile 2, so let's look at what we have happening here. For person 1, we have the cave and we have mystic. Reveals in intimate union with the divine. Revels in intimate union with the divine. The shadow attribute is delusional report with the divine. Kind of funny, a little bit contradicting. And then person number 2, their energy in this relationship, we have the shadow and light attribute sheds light on the potential wealth within you that can never be stolen. Shadow attribute stealing money, creative ideas, affection, or other powers you think you lack. And it is the thief. You can see already that in this dynamic right now, there's a bit of self-protection going on. So I can already see that there is both sides feeling defensive and a need to protect themselves. So I would say that this energy is not the most true version of yourselves. It is more of a defensive feeling, like both feel like they might be at risk of being misunderstood or harmed by the other. So there is definitely a defensiveness on both sides, and they're both coming up in slightly different ways here. And then for the conflict that occurred, or the miscommunication that occurred, we have 9 of water, your wishes come true, concerns fade away, a love of life. We have Archangel Jeremiel, review and evaluate a favorable assessment of the facts. Time to move in a new direction. And 4 of air. Time to rest or take a vacation. Allow more time before making a decision. Meditation may provide answers. So, person one, I keep saying pile one. Person one, the energy that I get for this person is that they're really feeling like they have to guard their heart, and they may feel towards, I should say, person number 2 right now, that they're a little more guarded. They're almost ready to defend themselves, defend their ideas, defend what specifically they're passionate about, what they're feeling called to do, what they're wanting to put their time towards. And this is because, like I said, this conflict that came up, the miscommunication that's been coming up, I feel like for this pile has been multiple ones. It's not just one, it's been a bunch over time. So person number 1 is very much in guarding their heart kind of place, and like ready to fight and defend what they believe and protect themselves in that way. Where person number 2 also is very much trying to guard their heart, but I almost feel like it's like trying to physically hide their emotions, physically hide how they're feeling things. And this is also them coming from their shadow side and not who they are. I also feel like for person number 2, they might even feel like how they can go from feeling very calm to just like in a snap of a second feeling guarded, defensive, like they have to protect themselves, very vulnerable. They're doing it in a bit of different ways though, but I feel like person number 1 is in the fight, flight, or freeze. They're more in the fight. And for person number 2, I feel like they're more in the stonewall energy, the disappear energy, the flight energy, the leaving. Not all the time, but I think they just tend to go more towards that type of energy. I also feel like person number 2 has felt like they need to resort to doing things that they wouldn't normally like to do to get what they're wanting from person number 1. So it could be, what would that look like? It could be anything from just not coming from a healthy place to get person number 1's attention or affection from person number 1, or person number 1's agreement on something. And the main misunderstanding or conflict that I see here is I see that there is just right now there's a misunderstanding or miscommunication on the importance of each other's desires and dreams. I think more so person 1 feels like person number 2 isn't respecting or seeing the importance of what person 1 is excited about or prioritizing or wanting to do more of. It could be studies, it could just be a hobby, it could be just a new topic that interests them, but whatever it is, person number 1 is not feeling like it's being appreciated by person number 2, or I do believe this is a family unit. So I believe that in this majority of those watching this, there could be a child or children also. And I think where there could be some tensions or problems is that person number 1 might have this hobby, interest, studies, new thing that they're doing, and person number 2 might not go out of their way to help with watching children or taking care of household tasks so that person 1 can have time to prioritize what they're wanting to do. It could even just be meeting up with friends once a week or something like that. Something that person number 1 really feels they need to feel like themselves and are excited about, and it's just not being fully understood by person number 2. The other thing I see going on here There's a few different things. So I should say there's an underlying message in all these cards saying that this time is coming to an end. And although it might be hard to see that it could ever end, that there is, like, Archangel Jeremiah is like the angel of looking back and taking accountability on where you've ended up, on what you've done, and where you want to go. And when he comes up, it's all about being able to change the path you're going down. So when I actually see him, although that might sound like some daunting things, it means that there's a new shift coming in. And even the card itself says renewal, which this is just a little bit of a side note. Whether you're person 1 or person number 2 watching this, there's definitely a message of saying it's important for both people in this relationship to look at what's going on within them, what needs aren't being met, what are they trying to communicate to their partners, what are they feeling like isn't being seen, heard, or respected by the other, because in that, you're going to get a lot more information about what's really going on here, because both people are equally in their defensive shadow side in this interaction when they're interacting with each other. Both need to go within and figure out what's going on so that you can come from a clearer headspace and resolve these conflicts and resolve these miscommunications and really get on the same page. Because right now it's almost like two inner childs are coming out and nothing can be heard or resolved in that type of energy. So there's definitely a little message around both parties doing some journaling work, some inner child reflection work, seeing what is coming up. When this person number 1 says whatever has been making person number 2 feel upset or vulnerable or like they need to get out of the situation or stand up for themselves and fight, become defensive, basically. Whatever is happening for person number 2 that's making them feel defensive, or to person number 1 that's making them feel defensive, they need to go within and figure out what is at the root of that. Do they feel not heard, seen? What story are they putting on their partner? Is this story real? Is this really what's happening? And once you see this story that you think is happening, you can see where else you felt like that in your life, where other places in your life this has hurt you, and then see where you need to take accountability for where there might be the miscommunication, and then also have hurtful or threatening questions to bring to the other person. And like I said, this really needs to be done on both sides for there to be a smoother communication, because right now it's two people ready to defend what they believe and feel, because neither one is feeling heard, or essentially I feel like neither one is feeling that their needs are being met by the other, or even acknowledged, I should say. For this one here, it's a lot of not even feeling like their needs are being acknowledged. But like I said, when I see this card, it tells me that, actually all these cards are telling me that there is a new energy coming in, and this is a hard spot, a low point in this relationship, but everything is going to turn around here. There is still a lot of hope and a lot of harmony to yet happen in this relationship. When I see this card here, I see, like, you can see there's all this abundance coming in, and the water sign in this deck symbolizes in family. So it really tells me that in your relationships, there will be like a more prosperous time, more harmony. You're going to have all the love and all the things you're wanting to manifest in. But right now you just can't see it because your head is like on the wrong side. Like you have to go deeper, and then you'll see how all that is just there waiting for you. So it tells me, one, that you're not feeling this right now, but it is there and it is going to happen. It is coming in. So it's a good validation card or confirmation card that this is just something that will pass, but it is also saying that it is important that you shift your perspective. And like I said, this is for both people. All this information is definitely for both people. Both people are needing a change in their perspective and how they're seeing things. And the other thing that is coming up about why these constant miscommunications or these little fights or arguments can be happening between this partnership is you're both just very tired. And I get that you actually just both need more physical rest, not to push yourselves too much. And hopefully you can find a way to maybe get a little more rest in your day, whether you just need to take a nap when you can or prioritize sleep a little bit more. But I get that that will bring so much more clarity in itself. When you're feeling rested and like yourself, you'll be able to see the situation better. You'll have less of a ready defensive physical body. Like if your physical body's this tired and you're already going to situations where you're anticipating having to protect yourself, your body's just already so much more stressed, and it's going to be a lot harder to stay calm in those situations and clear-minded. Like the air cards in this deck are all about mental clarity in your mind, in your thoughts, very much in the head kind of energy. So really, it's really saying that a lot of this misconceptions and arguments are coming from the head space and not so much what is really going on. But like I said, these kind of consistent miscommunications only come up when one person didn't feel like their needs were being met for a very long period of time, and now the other person isn't feeling like their needs are being met for a very long period of time. So how I would see this is each person thinks that the other one is withholding love or withholding fulfilling their need from the other, and I don't know if that's a conscious realization, which is why everything keeps coming back to it's so important to go within, get a little more sleep, and really see what's going on within you. What was the last thing that happened that person one or person two did that made them upset? And then really think, like, what was it? You can say it was their tone, it was the words they used, it was the way they physically responded, but try to go a little bit deeper. Really go into a place and try to feel or figure out what was happening within yourself. What did it remind you of? What story did you get when they did that thing or that action or said those words? And then I want you to really think about where else you felt like that and just really try to dissect it. Just to really see how much is coming from past and how much is coming from this specific partner. And if you've not had that need met in other relationships, and that's why you're getting that bias that when they say this, it means that need won't be met, because other times someone has said that to you, that need wasn't met. So it is a lot of self-reflection work in this pile. So I'm a little bit sorry for that. That isn't always what we want to hear, but I do feel like that's what's going to really create a lot of change here. And like I really have to reiterate, I do see like in all these cards that this is just a low point and that harmony will return to this relationship. As hard as that is to believe, I do feel like the energy here is really good. Just both partners are very triggered and coming from the wounding within them. Very tricky place to be coming from. Yeah, and the other thing I should just really comment on is that for person number two, if you're person one, you would think that person number two maybe didn't have a lot of emotion or have a lot of care or appreciation for you in this relationship, and you don't get that that's actually truth. That's just how their wounding is presenting itself. Like I really see that person number one might have more of a visible emotional reaction and trying to guard their heart and not get hurt, where person number two will almost seem like they don't even have a lot of emotion. It just doesn't exist. And that will be how it's perceived by person number one. That is definitely not the case for person number two. They are feeling everything just as much. They just have a very different protective mechanism than person number one. So if you're person number two watching this, I'm really seeing you. You're not heartless in any way. You're not lacking in emotion. You just have a different type of wounding, which means you have a different type of defense system within you. Okay, I want to move on to what does each person want from the other and how do they feel about each other outside of this conflict. because I think that's really important to get to. I feel like for this pile, you already know about the conflicts you're having, and you probably don't need to hear more about that. So let's just see, what does the other person feel like outside of that? Okay, so how does person 1 feel about person number 2 outside of this conflict? One more card. Okay, how does person number 2 feel about person number 1 outside of this conflict? How does person number 2 feel about person number 1 outside of this conflict? Thank you. All right, just get this other one here. So how does person number 1, what does person number 1 want from person number 2? What does person number 1, okay, we'll put that there. What does person number 2 want? Oh boy, sorry, these ones I'm having a hard time shuffling today. What does person number 2 want from person number 1? Okay, we've got 2. Okay, you know what, let's do one more. What does person number 1 want from person number 2? What does person number 1 want from person number 2? There. Okay, so we have, you know what, let's actually start with the love cards, because I feel like that might be a better place to start with this pile. So person number 1, outside of what's going on right now, they have a lot of trust in them. You know what, this is really interesting because I kept getting a little bit of a message here around finances and feeling like for one partner, there was a lot of stress around finances, and for another partner, they didn't feel any worry around finances, and I didn't completely understand what that was about. But yeah, there's something there. So hopefully that makes sense to you, but I just saw that when I saw trust, I felt like person number 1 really trusts person number 2 with their finances and with sharing their finances, something around that. So if there's some worry there for person number 2 around if they're making enough money or if they're making wise decisions with money for their family unit, whatever it is there, that person number 1 does trust you with that. And also another card for person number 1 for person number 2 is finances and career. Financial issues are a factor in love life. Okay. Yeah, so I think that just further cements that I actually see this as they, outside of this, do trust you with this. They don't, if there's some kind of defensiveness coming around this, I don't get that person number 1 normally feels this way about what's happening. And I do see that they just really trust you to, I just feel like to take care of them, to take care of the situation. So it could be that person number 1 might be a person who stays home more often with the children or the family unit. I do think that person number 1 still has like a part-time job or something around that, or might be studying. So I do feel like this doesn't have to be true for all, but I feel like for most people watching this reading, person number 1 will be either in a job that makes less money or working less because of other responsibilities. I think that's a big thing here. I do think that person number 1 has a lot of like household responsibilities. Definitely. They feel exhausted in that area around that. So I don't feel like I want anyone to feel undermined here, but they do trust person number 2 with the choices there and bringing in the money and taking care of the family unit. Yeah, they don't worry about it, I feel. Okay, and then for person number 2, for person number 1, okay. Okay, so this one's really interesting. So what I actually got from this card for how person 2 feels about person number 1 is I feel like there's a lot that they feel they don't quite always know. Yeah, there's definitely something, it says deception, but I don't feel like it's coming, I feel like that's just the word that was already on the card. What I actually get is sometimes they feel like that person 1 and 2 can not fully let each other in. So I get that they almost feel like there's each can wear a mask in the relationship, and it actually makes their heart a bit sad. Like, I feel like it really weighs on them. They really don't want that to be in the relationship, and they're really wanting a closer connection with person number 1. But I do get it's on both sides. They feel that, like, they themselves aren't always as honest as they should be, or as emotionally vulnerable is the word I want to use. Not honest, but vulnerable. And same thing with not always feeling they're getting that from person number 1. And the separation card, I actually feel like, I just feel like they feel like there can be distance between you because of that block within you guys. And it actually just, I actually can just feel just the sadness for person number 2. Like, they really get saddened, and like it like hurts. It hurts their heart to see that. And I just see, like, I can't stop looking at the smoke around this card, the mist. Like, they just can't always clearly see where person number 1 stands and what they really want from them. Yeah, so that's very interesting that this is coming up in how they feel about you outside this miscommunication. So this is something that they really weighs heavy on them constantly, I would say. So when I see like that new energy coming in, these new things, I would think that this type of energy is going to start to clear up, because it won't feel so much like each person is keeping their emotions to themselves, that person number 1 can't share their desires or their deepest like dreams and wishes with person number 2. And if you are person number 1 watching this, I really get that you probably feel like you've communicated all this to person number 2 before, but they really haven't heard it. Like, it just went through one ear out the other, and they almost need to rehear it because they really want to know what's deeper, what you really want from them, what makes you excited, what I just feel like they really want to know what your dreams are, is like the words I keep getting. And I find it so interesting because I feel like person number 1 feels like their dreams aren't appreciated by person number 2, and person number 2 just doesn't know what they are. So that would explain a little bit of some confusion there, hey? Like some miscommunications that could be happening around that. I would just like to add in that if person number 2 has historically or previously cheated on person number 1, and I'm not saying that person number 2 is planning on cheating on or anything like that, but it is a message. I think it's specific for one person or a couple of people here who may be wondering why person number 2 may have not been faithful in their relationship. And the message that I get is at the root, person number 2 has a fear of not being able to satisfy person number 1. And I mean, like, I feel like they see person number 1 as like this ultimate goddess, sexual, powerful being. And I feel like person number 2 doesn't always feel like they can meet up to the standards of person number 1. And I really have to emphasize that I don't get the impression that person number 1 is putting these pressures on person number 2, or even aware of this, that person number 2 has this false story, this false shame and guilt they carry on about not being good enough for person number 1. It is specifically, I believe, in a sexual sense. Take that how it resonates, but it is a specific message for someone. I at first wasn't sure if I was gonna say it or not, but it is important for someone, so only take it if it resonates. It's not for everyone who chose this pile. It's just definitely something person number 2's higher self wanted person number 1 to know, is that it's coming from their own belief in not being good enough, not being able to meet the needs of person number 1 the way that they would like to have them met. So very interesting. Okay, we are going to look at now what person number 1 is wanting from person number 2. We have, it says the Drowned King and Earth's Heart. So just looking at this one really quickly, how I would see some of this is person number 1 is really wanting, what's the word? A better, stronger home environment. Meaning like home, whether that's the relationships with their children, relationships with their partner, just feeling like their home feels homey. They're just wanting more of this in their life, from their relationship. And I feel like they really want to take the time to mend and heal this partnership. And I feel like when I see the Drowned King card, I feel a lot about how they're wanting to have a change in how they see things. And they want to change in how person number 2 sees them. So, person number 1 is really wanting person number 2 to come from a more heart-centered place. To come, and I actually get this in more aspects of life than than just the relationship. I think there is something else with career where person number 1 doesn't always feel that you're being as much to service to people as you could be for person number 2. That you have gifts and you have a lot of skills that you can offer others. So I do believe this is within their partnership and with just other people in general, that they would really like to see you nurture person number 2. I feel like they just want to see you become more of service to the world, to society, to people in general. And they're try to word this appropriately. They're wanting this so much for you that they're almost at the point where they are okay with you learning it the hard way. Like if they say, like, because they believe you can be so much better and you have an ability to help so many people and to really come from, I keep getting like a heart-centered place, a very giving and loving and authentic place. They're really just wanting to see that happen however it needs to happen for you. Yeah, definitely wanting to see you like nurture and grow this new skill or this new gentle side, compassionate side of you that they can see is there. So essentially, they're just really wanting person number 2 to, I keep using the word like change their story, change the place that they're coming from and the energy that they're coming at person number 1 with. This is coming a bit from person number 1's side of things, so do keep that in mind. I'm just relaying what I'm getting out of the cards. And then for person number 2, what they're wanting from person number 1, lightning. I actually see this card for this pile as they're really just actually wanting person number 1 to be easier on them, to come at them with a little less intensity and a little less defensiveness, which is always easier said than done when people are coming from their wounding or their wounded selves. Yeah, I feel like they're just wanting, I actually do get a little more space from person number 1. Like, what would be a good example? They might feel like you worry about what they're doing or where they are a lot, and they're just really wanting a little bit of a longer leash is the energy I'm getting. Wanting a little more trust and a little more gentleness from person number one, which is very interesting because I do see that trust did come up, that they do trust person number two, but person number two just doesn't really feel that right now, that they're not really sure if they do have the trust of person number one. And then the other thing I'm seeing is person number two is really just wanting to be completely seen, accepted, and loved for who they are. I feel like they want to be completely accepted by person number one for not being perfect, and almost forgiven for not being perfect. I feel like there's a bunch of different layers here. I feel like for some of you, there might have been some past incidences where person number two could be feeling this from. Everything that's being said is just information for both parties. I'm not saying which side, what each person should do or shouldn't do. I'm just really want to reiterate that I'm just conveying what I'm seeing coming up. So yeah, for person number two, they're really just wanting, I almost want to see like a transformation in how person number one is seeing them. They really want them to see them differently, see them as a loving, as a imperfect, as a wounded and hurt human being. And fully accepted for that. And I feel like they feel like if they receive this, that this would transform how they are towards person number one. This would transform how they would feel more, I would say like they almost feel a bit like a failure, like they have failed at something. And this could really create some self-fulfilling prophecies from person number two, could really create some defensiveness there. And person number one, it's not for you to take on another new responsibility of this, but it's just what I'm seeing coming up within person number two. Okay, I want to pull some cards for what this connection looks like when it's in harmony. Basically the potential of this relationship outside of this conflict or this misconceptions. I'm just gonna move these up a little bit again. Okay. So we're just gonna ask, what does this relationship look like outside of this conflict and miscommunication? Okay, let's see here. So we have children, which I think further cements that I do believe that the majority of the people watching this pile do have their own children. Either it is a child or children from a previous relationship and this person has stepped in and taken the other parental role, or it is biologically both these people's children. But what I see is your love life is being affected by children. So I do feel like that there is more balance in, I would say, the relationship and the time that is given to children and to the partnership itself. And I feel like it's a better balance. How I see that is being able to give time to the children, love to the children, support the children the way they need, but also still giving the attention and the nurturing and the needs being met between just the partnership relationship between these two people as well. I actually see this as being like a new energy. I don't know if this partnership has had this type of dynamic in it before, but I almost wonder if that's what it's talking about, this new energy and a change coming in for this partnership. So I see that. And then forgiving and learning. As you release and heal the past, you experience more love in your present moments. So this is really affirming too that whatever has happened in this past relationship, I do really feel like there's new energy coming to it, a new type of a new cycle coming in. So it's not going to be the same old stuff coming in again and again. There's really going to be new change and new ways about new, what's the word I'm trying to use? There's just going to be a new type of love here, a new type of dynamic between the whole family unit. And I do feel like it will be better because everything here is very red, which tells me that, and there's white. So it's going to be like, it's going to be very healing for the family unit, for the partnerships involved and the children involved. And you think even like the past wounding in family units or partnerships that both people have had. Which makes sense why this could be a bit tricky because you're both coming from wounding and you're both trying to heal that wounding within yourselves through this partnership. So it is definitely a very soul growth relationship if you haven't felt like that already. And then stay optimistic about your love life. Positive thinking and faith will bring you romance. And here is just like another little reminder that you are working on your communication blocks. You are working on healing that and bringing in more heart-centered speech. And how I would see that is that instead of coming from a place of defensiveness, I see that the goal in this relationship, the harmony, is going to come from coming from a heart-centered place, come from a place of being vulnerable and honest and not so defensive. But like it says, it won't just all be done in a day. This harmony is something that will come through some work on communication, and it's really going to help dissolve and heal old wounds from your family units that you were born into and in this partnership and your family units that you have now. Yeah, so it's definitely a very growth and a very changing relationship to be in. I feel like if you've experienced previously unhealthy or harmful or hurtful relationships in the past, that this relationship is helping break down those cycles for both sides in different ways. And just to mention, one of the reasons why you might have been drawn to this fluorite crystal is it literally helps detoxify and transform negative energy into positive energy, and it helps with mental clarity and just promoting a more peaceful mind. And I always think of fluorite good for the heart and connecting the mind with the heart. I don't know if it actually does that. That's just what I always associate fluorite with for some reason. So to me, it would really make sense that you all were drawn to this crystal because ultimately you're wanting that right now for this relationship, for yourselves. Yeah, it really does make sense. It is pretty inexpensive, so I would recommend maybe even carrying around a piece of fluorite right now to help remind you to come from a heart-centered place and to create change. Yeah. Because I feel both sides are really wanting it. Okay, so this is where I'm gonna leave this reading. If you want to get the Reiki session at the end, the Reiki clearing and healing, it will be at the very end for the collective. I would recommend it for this pile if you're open to it and you're feeling called to do it. It's going to help just get rid of some of this stagnant energy, some of this frustration and this buildup of just lower energy that you've been stuck in. But it's not the only thing you'll have to do, but I feel like it might just help you feel a little bit lighter and really take in everything that has come through in this reading and know what to do, trust yourself on it, where you want to go, what actions you want to take. Because like I said, I really did want to make a point not to tell anyone what to do or not do in these card readings, just to put all the information out there and leave it for you to digest, process, and decide where you want to go from here. Okay, so I'll see some of you in your card readings, and I will see some of you another time. Well, I'll see some of you in the clearing and healing, and I will see the rest of you in next week's card reading. pile 3, you all chose this Angel Aura Quartz. One of the reasons why you may have been drawn to this crystal in particular is it helps eliminate limiting beliefs. It helps release very heavy, overwhelmed emotions, whether it's emotional or physical. It helps clear the mind. And it is overall considered a master healing crystal. So if you're having a hard time with limiting beliefs, if you're having a hard time feeling balanced and calm, and just overall drained or emotionally and mentally overwhelmed, that could be why you chose this crystal. Okay, so I'm just gonna pull some cards here really quick, and then we'll look at them together. Right, pile 3. So the energy we have for person number 1. Extra cards kept wanting to slip out, so I let them have an extra one here. So for the energy that you're in right now, we have Pioneer, passion for doing and creating what has not been done before. And shadow attribute is compulsive and need to keep moving on. You also have the Lover, and we have the Venom. Those like that. And then for person number 2, we have King, light attributes, enlightened, benevolent. There we go. Couldn't say that word. We have enlightened, benevolent leadership, benefiting those in your charge. Shadow attributes, excessive feelings of entitlement, rulership without restraint. And we have the Vow. And then for the conflict, we have 2 of Air. Sorry, this card got a bit chewed on by my cat. We have 2 of Air, being unable or unwilling to make a decision, a stalemate, pretending there is no problem. We have 9 of Air, expecting the worst, self-fulfilling prophecies, sleepless nights. And we have the Magician. You are ready. You have the resources or the ability to manifest them. Life is magical. So I just want to make sure you can see all the cards. All right, pile 3. What I'm seeing happening here. So person number 1. Actually, just to sum this up, I get that both people in this relationship, this partnership, are equally committed and are very loving towards each other, equally wanting to be in the relationship and wanting to be their best person. Where I see some issues popping up in this dynamic is person number 1, I believe, is just very, very gentle-hearted. They're very compassionate. They want to be truly the best person they can be. Right down to it almost being a bit of a conflict for themselves. What I mean by that is I feel like they are literally biting their own tongue when they disagree with person number 2, or when they want to do something different than number 2. If there's like a priority thing that pops up, I feel like person number 1 might feel differently or want to do a different thing, but I really get the point that they bite their own tongue from saying anything, to a point where it's actually causing them a lot of like emotional turbulence within themselves. Like when something might happen, they might get, there's just like that buildup of anger, or that buildup of frustration, buildup of sadness, whatever the emotion is. It's just kind of being bottled up in a sense, and it's coming from person number 1 really just wanting to be so good, like such a good partner. And they really want to, like, I feel like they just want to put their heart out there. They want to be the best lover, the best like empathic, compassionate, perfect partner for person number 2. Like I said, it's almost like to a point where it's overwhelming for them because there's all these emotions that are starting to get a little too bottled up. And what would be a good word to put here? Like, I feel like it's a bit of them waiting to not be able to take it anymore, for it to kind of just bubble over and then seep into this relationship more. And I feel like it already would be in small ways. There could be a little bit of unintended bitterness in their voice, unintended frustration coming out towards person number 2 that person number 1 doesn't even fully understand where it's coming from, because I just get like, they are so gentle and they're so loving and so compassionate, and they really want to share that love and that compassion, and they just want to bring more light to other people's lives. So it's very unlike them, but it's just something they're learning to be able to voice in relationship. So it is something that person number 1 is starting to learn. I do feel like if person number 1 feels like they might hold a little bit of grudges more than normal, that would be the effects of this not being heard or being able to express yourself in the moment, causing some turbulence within yourself. Person number 2, I feel like, has a very big leadership quality about them. And also, same thing, I get that they're coming from a very loving, heart-centered place, but the problem is I feel like they think they always have to be the leader. They always have to be the one making the decision, organizing things, taking the first step, almost also to their detriment, where like some of the best leaders are able to let others be self-directive, to ask the questions and just give more choices and empowering people. And like I said, I don't think this is coming from a bad place, but I feel like there's this pressure on themselves to always be the best leader, to be the one that is strong, the one that knows the right thing to do, the one that takes care of the people, of the other partner, that it is almost sometimes falling into the shadow attributes of this card. Feeling like even though maybe not everyone is on board for that decision, feeling like you can see that it's the best decision, so it's a decision that has to be done, that everyone has to go along with. And I don't even think this is the intention of person number 2. It's just how it may be coming off to other people as being a little more rigid and a little more having to do things the way that you see that they would be best done. And as you can see, for person number 1 who doesn't like to say something to upset or distress someone or go against someone, especially their partner, you can see how there could be a lot of miscommunications and small conflicts happening within person number 1 for sure in this kind of dynamic. And I also really just want to say, when I see the vow, I really see that this is where person number 2 feels really called to protect, lead, take care of, handle all the difficult decisions for others, especially for this partner, but just others in general. Other family members, other friends, people who work for them or alongside them. They've almost like promised themselves that they will be in this role. They have to be this person for everyone. So the conflict or the miscommunications that I see arising here, I see that there is a lot of butting heads, but like I said here, I see that one is a little more authoritative than the other one here. So also the air cards being a representative of specifically family groups and relationships in this deck, I would say that I really do see this as person 1 here and person number 2, where person number 1 isn't really excited about going along with these decisions, but person number 2 feels that it's the best thing to do or the best way to do it, or it will be the best thing overall, that they can kind of just dominate this dynamic. And this is causing a lot of those bottled up lower emotions, not feeling seen, not feeling fully heard by person number 1. And so the complicated part here is that I see, like when I see this card here, I see that person number 1 is really being called to I almost want to say step out of the shadow a bit. Step out of feeling like you have to keep these emotions to yourself, and just, it's okay to share how you're feeling when you're coming from a heart-centered place. When you're coming from a place of saying, I really have a need for, or saying like, I feel really excited about doing this activity, or I feel really excited about spending time doing this. I really have a need for this type of connection with you. Like, it's saying to come in with it, with expressing the need that you have, the desire that you're wanting, and just come from a heart-centered place, not a place of feeling like you'll have to defend it or not express it, or express it in a way that is defensive because you're scared person number 2 will essentially not hear it or say no to that idea. I really get that it's saying person number 2 really does want the best for people. That's really their goal, their energy. And if you come from a place of saying, this is my need, this is what I'm wanting, person number 2 will want to hear that, because they do ultimately want to fulfill everyone's needs. They just sometimes can get stuck in the energy of thinking that they can see clear what someone needs, but it also comes from the fact that if someone else isn't voicing their needs, they don't realize that the other person already knows what their needs are and how to fulfill them. I hope that makes sense. Person number 2 essentially needs person number 1 to be more clear and direct about what their needs and their feelings are, so that they can understand how to meet them. Sorry everyone, my camera battery just needed to be changed there. So yeah, what I was saying is that essentially person number 2 needs person number 1 to tell them what their needs are and come from a heart-centered place, so that they can create the change in the dynamic in the relationship that person number 1 is needing, just for more peacefulness within themselves in this relationship dynamic, overall fulfillment in life. Because I feel like this is really starting to become less of just a dynamic that's affecting person number 1 in the relationship, but also in other areas of their life where they, I think, aren't sleeping very well. They are anticipating the kind of like worst situation when bringing up a conversation with person number 2. And I really, really do get that. So what I wanted to say about this card here is I see that person number 2 is seen as a leader by everyone else that they're usually associated around. So person number 2 is really just going to continue the dynamic that they've been in unless person number 1 says something, because everyone else is essentially quite fine with person number 2 taking the leadership role, with making the decisions, making the plans, and they're all quite at peace with it. So if person number 1 is not feeling good about it, is feeling overwhelmed, or starting to feel like they're suppressing a lot of gross feelings, it's really important for them to express it. And I do see like little butterflies in this card, which really just reiterates to me that change is possible in this. And that's why it's really important that person number 1 doesn't just start to find themselves creating the story that this is just how things are in this relationship, because I do see that change can happen here, and I really think that it's going to make a lot more harmony and peacefulness for person number 1 once this is addressed. I think it will be very healing for the relationship and for person number 1 in general, to start knowing that they can express themselves and that person number 2 does want to meet their needs and hear what their needs are. And yeah, I keep seeing like self-fulfilling prophecies, sleepless nights, expecting the worst. I feel like that's more on the side of person number 1, who doesn't really feel like they have a choice in what is being done and what is happening. So it's really saying that it's time for you to take charge and change it. And when you see Archangel Raziel coming up in this card, It really does mean that this situation can be changed or reversed faster than person one realizes. In person number two, I think you would be feeling a bit of like that bitterness or that resentment or that like not as excited energy from person number one slipping in. So if you're person number two watching this card reading, I would maybe suggest sitting down and making sure you're approaching this with a more open mind and really asking person number one how they've been feeling, and if they feel like they aren't quite being heard or their needs aren't quite being heard, and really come from a place of stepping out of the ego, because this is definitely a pattern that has followed them in other relationships, whether it's romantic or friendship or family relationships. So it's really something that they're going to need person number two for you to help let them know that it doesn't have to be that way, that they're just falling into an old pattern, and that this pattern doesn't need to exist in this relationship, and that you really do want their needs to be met and want to hear their thoughts on things. And if you're feeling brave enough, I would even say it could be really powerful to apologize for not being aware of this sooner, but really needing person one to communicate it better to you. Because like I said, I don't think this is anybody's fault. I just think that these are two different people with different communication ways, and that both have done these two patterns their whole lives, and now they're meeting another person to challenge them to grow and change. And essentially that's why we see people with such different relationship patterns or communication styles coming together, so that they can learn from each other how to grow and how to shift that, and how to be just like a newer, better version of themselves. It's just the next step for each one to learn how to be able to address each types of person. So it's kind of a neat thing to come up in relationship if you disregard the emotional frustrations and lows and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and then I also really think that there has been a bit of a habit of not discussing this these kind of, I feel like they're little conflicts or little tension points, and there's just this past history of maybe not fully talking about them after, just kind of forgetting about them, or not communicating why you felt the way you did or why you responded the way you did. And it's really saying that also has sort of added to the fire, or added to these buildup of conflict between you. And tension, I think for this pile it's tensions between you all. So it's really just saying that's what's happening, and some suggestions on maybe how to shift that for you all. But I definitely feel like there's so much power in hearing each other out and coming from that heart-centered place on both sides. And I really, just like I said, I feel like there's so much love between this connection that although each one may not always feel it or see it, it's definitely there on both sides. Okay, we are gonna scoop up these cards and just make a little more room. Put the conflict card in the middle. We are going to take a look now on what each person is needing from the other, or wanting from the other, and how they feel outside of this miscommunication, tension, or conflict about the other. So okay, so let's look at what person number two is wanting from person number one. We have Ash. And what person number one's wanting from person number two, we have Chiron. So for person number two, what I'm really seeing is they're wanting forgiveness from person number one. Forgiveness for any harm or any past things that person number two may have done that may have hurt person number one. I also get that they're really wanting person number one to know that they're okay and that they're really in support and encouraging person number one to revisit past woundings, past traumas, whether it was within this relationship, other relationships, their family upbringing, to really take the time to go through those and break old patterns, break patterns that are both generational, that are just ones that have been holding back person number one. And it's very interesting. I wasn't expecting that to come out for person number two, but they're really wanting to see person number one grow and become essentially the best person, the healthiest person, the most satisfied and happy person that they can be. So it really comes not from a place of wanting to fix you, but from a place of wanting to see person number one grow and be the best person they can be. I keep getting most fulfilled. I don't know if best person is the right word. It's more like they're just really wanting them to fully benefit from their life, to really experience their life fully. And they're really wanting that healing to happen so that they can become closer with person number one and have a stronger relationship all together. And not to be afraid to like shed tears in front of them, to have those sad emotions, those not so pretty emotions in front of them. And then the interesting thing over here is person number one has a very similar thing that they're wanting from person number two, where they're wanting person number two not to feel so pressured to live up to standards. And I almost got that maybe like person number two's parents or one of their parents was very successful or was very respected. Someone might have passed away that was a role model for person number two. Or they might have separated connections with person number two, but person number one really wants person number two to know that they don't have to live up to the unfair standards that were put on person number two. They want them to know that they have their own story, that they are their own amazing person, and that not being perfect is what makes them perfect, and a compassionate person, a compassionate, beautiful human being. So it's, I would almost say like person number one has a little bit more of a feminine energy towards person number two, meaning that they're coming at it with more compassion, holding space. It's okay just to be energy. And person number two has a little bit more of a masculine energy. And I have to really reiterate, this doesn't mean that one is feminine or masculine. It just means that one is in the healthy feminine for number two, and number two is in a more healthy masculine for number one. Doesn't mean anything about actual gender, just the energy they have towards one another and that they're able to hold for one another. I almost feel like person number two is here to help person number one be seen, and person number one is there for person number two to hold space and give that compassion and acceptance that person two is needing. And the other message from person number one for person number two is really that there's just so much strength in not being perfect, because it almost makes you stronger and more relatable to others. It's what gives you empathy. It's what allows you to have heart and see other people's stories. Yeah, so it's very like beautiful energy. Both want each other to heal and be the best they can be. So it's very interesting that there's very similar wants, but just a very different way about illustrating it and a very different energy to it. So now we're going to look at the way that person number one feels about person number two outside of this conflict. And we have chemistry, which I really like. So there's a strong magnetic attraction here. Very interesting. I'm very drawn to the light here. I can't help but think that this just further goes to cement that there is a healing that you two are bringing to each other here. Whether person number one, it's their higher self recognizing this, or if they already know this themselves, but there's definitely a healing that each one brings to each other. Definitely person number one, I see that the healing is within the family systems and the roots, and feeling safe and really getting rid of old, I think, ancestral generational patterns. And then the healing for person number 2, I feel like, is in communication, in a healthy leadership role, understanding how to be honestly just like a truly good leader. So that's really cool to see that that is something that you two are healing within each other and teaching each other. And then this, pay attention to red flags. The signs are cautioning you. I think this one, actually what I keep getting this is reiterating that it's really important not to not address the conflicts or the things that are tricky. And it's not meaning that, what would be the word here? I'm not getting that it's meaning that there's an unhealthy relationship here. I'm getting that it's important to pay attention to what's happening within yourself and be able to address it and not ignore it, and understand that growth happens when you deal with the conflict, deal with the issues coming forward, and really communicate them. If you're bringing the issues forward and the other person won't even acknowledge the needs or hear the needs don't think the needs need to be met or are important, and you've actually truly come out and expressed them, then that would be a red flag. But what I'm really getting is that not to ignore the red flags that your body's giving you, that your emotions are creating within you, that are saying, hey, something here isn't good, you're not meeting your needs, you're not communicating your needs properly, we need you to pay more attention to what's going on within. So I am a little interested why this is coming up in how they feel about person number 2 is not always getting the needs met or not always addressing the conflict. I actually feel like this is a little bit of a message just around the whole relationship, how it's important to nurture relationships and address issues so that there is more harmony within it. Okay, so what we have for person number 2, for person number 1, about how they feel about them. Keep an open mind. Your soulmate may differ from your usual type and expectations. And express your love. Go ahead and make the romantic gestures. So a lot of yellow is coming out for this person. I don't know why I keep seeing this as their pressures on themselves to think they need to lead this role. But I just gotta say, like, really what I see here is that there is a lot of healing that person number 2 gets from person number 1, and there is a lot that they want to provide for them. Like, I feel like person number 2 really wants to create that safe, accepting space for person number 1, and I think it's coming up because they really love being able to do that for them. I think they feel like person number 1 has had some bad relationships or some harder times, and they really love being able to create a safer space. That's what they really want to do for person number 1. Keeping an open mind. What I like about this is that I think despite person number 2's rigid exterior that is sometimes perceived by person number 1, they really do want to hear the other thoughts, the other opinions, the other suggestions. It's just that they don't have the most open way of discussing it, but they do actually really want to hear it, and they're very intrigued by what other people have to say, but that intrigue can seem like shut downness is maybe I'm not sure if that's a real word, but they almost seem closed off, but they're really just there thinking in their head, like, how do they feel about that? They didn't even think it was an option, so they're just kind of processing all that, while the other person over here, it just seems so obvious to have been thinking that or seen that other way of doing things. So I think overall, for person number 2, they really like growth. There's a lot of growth here. Growth that person number 1 brings to person number 2. Okay, what we have left here is the energy of this relationship when it's in harmony. What does that look like? Let's just push those cards up a little bit more. All right, so what is the energy of this relationship when it is in harmony? What is the energy of pile three's relationship when it's in harmony? Let's take a look here. We have free yourself. Time to take back control of your life. So, what does it look like in harmony? I feel like that right there says it all. That it really is not feeling so much like one person who has to do what the other person has to do. That it's more of a, what's the right word? There's no boss in this relationship. Both people are equal. Both know what they want and what they're gonna do, and it's a discussion. It's not just a, this is what's happening, this is what's gonna be done. Yeah, and what I really like this says is free yourself, because I think it's really saying for person number one, it's so important for you to take a stand for yourself and really just reiterate how you're feeling, your needs that aren't being met, what you do need to be met. And I mean, from what I can see, as I think person number two does want to hear it and see it, they just have a way you're not really used to for how they will reciprocate it. It seems closed off, but I think it's actually something where they have to go within, think about it for a bit, and come back and tell you how they really did feel about it. Not to take their first impressions from it. True love, this is the romance of a lifetime. So that's what it's like in harmony. I think that this, like, it in its harmony, it seems like a supportive relationship, one that helps clear, what's the words? I feel like helps break down old habits, old patterns on both sides. That really, once it's figured out, it's so supportive and in connection with each other. How I would see that is becoming so close with someone that you can already understand how they feel about something. You're not needing an explanation anymore. You know that there's gonna be this emotional reaction in this situation, and knowing how to support each other and meet each other's needs. Attraction. We have you attract romantic love by enjoying this moment fully, and this is what I really see. So heart-centeredness being really key. When both people come from a heart-centered energy, from just wanting to meet each other's needs and expressing each other's needs, that this is what's going to really be an amplifier in this relationship. That you don't realize that when you feel like your needs are being met and you're being heard and respected, that all of a sudden there's way more passion and attraction and harmony in this relationship, and just overall love. Really nice energy. Attraction, true love, support, and feeling free to be you, freedom within the relationship. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I just really wanted to reiterate, nothing in this card reading hopefully will tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing. I just wanted to give you everything that I saw come up so that you can take this information and have it as something to help you make your decisions on, help you to bring clarity to something or validations around however you were feeling, and to really just know that I don't want to put any opinions on you. I just want you to have some more information to make the decision that's right for you in this relationship. Okay, so if you would like to receive the Reiki Healing, we are going to be doing that now at the end of this card reading. You just have to hang on for a couple of seconds and it will take you right to it. If you are not wanting that, then I just hope you have the best week, the best day that you can. Best of luck in this relationship dynamic. Seems like a lot of good things there still to come. So hopefully this brought you some encouragement and some renewed hope for getting through it, getting through this lower spot. Okay, you all have a good one. I will see some of you soon, and I'll see the rest of you in a week. Alright, hello everyone. We are going to be starting the double practitioner Reiki session for you all. We have your crystals here to symbolize each pile, and then we have crystals here to symbolize each one of your chakras. Alright, so if you're able to, please relax, close your eyes, take some deep breaths, ground yourself, and then we're just gonna play some singing bowls and we are gonna do some Reiki on your chakras for you. All right, we're gonna get started now. All right, that's the end of this Reiki session. I hope you all drink lots of water and take it easy on yourselves for the rest of the day. I'll see you in a week.